political party system in America next, the one that runs between 1824 and 1860. Now, it's important to point out the differences between the first and the second political party systems. There are three primary differences that we have to bear in mind. In the first political party system, we had it being built from the top down. In other words, Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton wrote extensively to the different members from around the country of their committees of correspondence, and they tried to recruit them to form their new political parties. So in the first political party era, you have Jefferson and Hamilton building those political parties from the top down. In the second political party era, with the defeat of Andrew Jackson and the U.S. House of Representatives giving the presidential election of 1824, awarding it to John Quincy Adams instead of to Andrew Jackson, even though Jackson had more popular votes and more electoral college votes, but he didn't have that majority of electoral college votes that was necessary. So therefore, Andy Jackson's followers went off and they formed their own political party. They were so angry, they were so frustrated, they were so dispirited. They went off and they left the Democratic Republican Party and they formed their own party in the general stores, in the church basements, in school auditoriums and private homes of America. And this, of course, is the Democratic Party that we know today. Indeed, the Democratic Party's father is Andrew Jackson, certainly not Thomas Jefferson. So we have the Democratic Party being formed from the bottom up. You have all these individuals who coalesce because they want Andy Jackson as the successful presidential candidate in 1828. And again, in reaction to the formation of the Democratic Party, the leftover Democratic Republicans who didn't share Andy Jackson's philosophies of government and who just didn't like him, and the remaining Federalists, they coalesced into the Whig Party. And so these two parties really form on their own. People around the country form them. There aren't a group of leaders pulling the strings from the top, as you saw in the first party system. The second major difference between the two political party systems was that the first political party system was highly ideological. You find that the Democratic Republican Party and the Federalist Party, they stood for principles and values. And these were important to the parties and to the party leaders and the party membership. And they stood by those principles. In the second political party system, what was important was winning elections. They were pragmatic parties, not ideological parties. So that's a big difference between the first and the second political party systems as well. In the first political party system, we have ideological parties. In the second political party system, we have pragmatic parties. The third and final difference between these two political systems was that in the first political party system, we have a system where we have participation is highly limited. In order to vote, you had to be white, you had to be male, you had to own property, you had to be literate, for example. As we enter what is referred to as the Jacksonian era of American history, beginning in the 1820s to the 1830s, we find that what happens? We find that soon the requirements for land ownership are waived. They're reduced and then they're waived. Here in Pennsylvania, originally, one had to own 60 acres of land to vote. How many of you or your families own 60 acres of land? You know, my family only owns 10 acres. We would not have been allowed to vote. So voting was circumscribed. I think in the Philadelphia, in the aftermath of William Penn, I believe that Philadelphia had something like 5% of the population could vote. The rest were excluded by the property ownership requirement. So that began to be reduced or waived. Eventually, we have literacy requirements being reduced or waived as well. So the second political party era, even though women and only whites can still vote and women can't, you find that there is more mass participation in the second political party era. So the first political party era is one of limited political participation. The second political party era is one of greater political participation. These are the three fundamental differences between these two eras. Now let's go into this second era that we have. We have, over time, you find, as I talked about previously a few lessons ago, you find that the Democratic Party was comprised of Southern Democrats who very much wanted to preserve slavery and wanted to pass it down to successive generations. They viewed slaves as property. The Democrats in the North were not as gung-ho about slavery as were the Democrats in the South, but they were willing to tolerate it so that the unity of the nation could be preserved. The Whig Party, over time, we find that that was a compromise between the northern and southern factions of the party, where they couldn't be the same type of compromise that you found in the Democratic Party. Northern Whigs wanted to end slavery not today, but yesterday. Better yet, how about last decade? They were rabid abolitionists and wanted to end it as quickly as possible. We find the Whigs in the South, they weren't crazy about slavery, but again, they were willing to tolerate some extension of slavery so that the Union could be preserved. Well, the Democrats could make an accommodation between their northern and southern wings. The Whigs could not. So slowly, surely, over time, we find that the Whig Party is fracturing. And out of those splinters, we find the Know Nothing Party, we find the Free Soil Party, and eventually we find the Republican Party. Of course, the Republican Party is founded in Jackson, Michigan. It's founded in 1854. In 1854 is the first meeting of the Republican Party in Jackson, Michigan. We find its first official meeting is held in Ripon, Wisconsin, R-I-P-O-N, Ripon, Wisconsin. You find that the Republicans eventually organize themselves and run their first candidate for the presidency in 1856. And that candidate is none other than John C. Fremont. We've talked about him before, the great pathfinder. He was a very proud man, a very ambitious man. He played a key role in the entry of California into the Union as a state. There's one other thing I want to talk about here. Let's take a pause for a moment. My memory's failing. What's the other
I
thing
don't know.
I wanted to pick up?